You're listening to Love and Light with Dr. Lisa, Everyday Living in Peace. Day-to-day living can be difficult in our world today, and most people don't know how to live a peaceful, joy-filled existence. The key to this is simple: love. Join me, Dr. Lisa Collins, for the next hour as I unpack and identify the need for a peaceful, love-filled existence by engaging the challenging and hard topics of life. On this show, you will lean into the healing practices that enlarge your spiritual reality through the act of love. This kind of love begins with yourself and your neighbor and transcends age, race, sex, generation, class, and sexual identity. The world changes when we root ourselves in love. Love and Light with Dr. Lisa starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Lisa, and you're listening to Love and Light, Living Every Day in Peace on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, and let us help you experience how to bring more love into your everyday life each second and fourth Wednesday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 12 Mountain, 4 Eastern Time. We will have tools for living every day in peace. Now, today, we know that our world needs healing and community, and at so many levels. And as we have observed the invasion of Ukraine, our hearts are hurting for those who are affected by violence every day in our country and out of our country. How do we understand and process such acts? Portland Playhouse theater production of Titus, Andronicus, really made me kind of pay attention a little bit. We have the directors here, and made a way for community well-being and broke gender and racial paradigms. Welcome, Brian Weaver, the artistic director of Portland Playhouse, an advocate for community transformational justice through theater, as well as the Tina Packard, founding artistic director of Shakespeare and Company, another advocate for community transformation and justice through theater. Gosh, I'm so excited to have you both here. Welcome to Love and Light, Brian and Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. It's a real honor to be here with you today. And Tina, I can't believe we get this chance to talk together for a whole hour. Oh my God.
It's good.
What a blessing this is going to be.
So exciting. I mean, first of all, I just want the listeners to know a little bit about each of you and your journey, because it's just quite a journey. I got to learn a little bit of it by listening to you two, which ignited me to have you on the podcast. So if you could please tell us a little bit about your journey, about theater, and about social change. I know that's a lot, but if you could talk, just touch a little bit, give the listeners an idea.
You want to go first, Brian?
I thought you might.
All right, I will. What happened to me, Dr. Lisa, was I was an actor in England, and I was doing pretty well. I was with the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is very prestigious. I was doing a kind of mobile masterpiece theatre with Ian McKellen. I was doing Doctor Who, which is the thing that people, I was doing pretty well. But there was an absence in my life, and I kept on thinking theatre has to be more than this. And I decided I would switch to directing so that I had the power and also the overview to start working on Shakespeare plays. And it was always Shakespeare I was most attracted to, because his stories are so compelling, but his thinking is so deep, and the demand he puts on the artists who work on his plays is just enormous. So you find yourself expanding into his greatness, if I can put it like that. Added to which, you know, as Toni Morrison said, until I knew language, I didn't know myself, or I'm paraphrasing slightly, but something like that. And he gives us language. So I decided to be a director, and then no sooner had I started directing than I decided I had to have my own company. so that I could really do the things that I was fascinated by. And it was actually the training that went um, into actors that I really liked. And then eventually I came to America and started my own company. But at the source of everything, Dr. Lisa, is the question, what is the function of theatre? What is it meant to be for? And I came to the understanding that really it's to speak the unspeakable in a public place. It's to bring those things that are unconscious in our lives, both collectively and individually, and bring it to consciousness. And we're in a community as we listen to this. And so we know what's being said. There's no kind of pretending we didn't hear it or pretending we didn't see it. We know what it is, and that search for the truth actually makes a compelling way in which people, connect with each other. And so I've known Brian for a long time. So when he asked me, what do you want to do? What should we do? I, thought Titus Andronicus is Shakespeare's bloodiest play. I think there's something like 26 deaths or tortures or whatever. And I thought I really want to see how we do this and do it with a multiracial, multi-ethnic group of people, because it's about racism and sexism and the violence of that. Will that do? Is that okay?
That's wonderful. I don't know how you're going to top that, Brian.
Well, look, I like that, Tina, you started at the beginning of your life, and I love your story of that you were a young rising star, and sort of, in theater, but also in what could have become the multi-billion-dollar entertainment industry, and shows sort of you're forging your own path in that world. I grew up Mennonite in a small Mennonite community in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I did not grow up knowing that there was such a thing as professional actors. That didn't seem like a real career path. I thought maybe I would go into Bible religion studies or possibly English or literature. And it took until the end of college, and even then starting to go on a couple auditions, where I realized that people really did make their life, that you could make a living in the arts, be a professional artist, and it's sort of in its own right. So a little bit of my journey is that I started pursuing that, and I moved to Seattle to be a professional actor. I worked at a farmer's market and did odd acting jobs here and there. I just started to get a little bit into the professional world and started learning what it meant to be, to join the actors union, or to sort of the way of working in a legitimate professional sense. And I thought I needed to get some more skills. And so I read about this company, Shakespeare and Company on the East Coast. And I thought, yes, I should learn some Shakespearean actor skills. There are a lot of jobs in that sphere. I should learn how to do an Elizabethan bow, maybe how to hold a rapier, and some real marketable skills as an actor. So I went to Tina's company, and it was quite a transformational, intensive month of training for me. It was like one of those trainings or workshops you go that really just shifts your whole worldview about what something is or could be. Because what her company was teaching, I mean, there was technique, absolutely, but it was how to unveil yourself, how to bring your humanity as a human being, who your thoughts, your emotional truth, your psychological depth, all of you into the character, so that it wasn't learning how to put on or create artifice in order to tell someone else's story. It was how to bring the fullest, deepest version of you and tell that story through the text of Shakespeare. So for me, it was a pivotal point in my life as an artist, as a human being, where I realized the role that I wanted to be as an artist was to manifest and be part of that transformation, and not to put on airs. And then my wife Nikki and I moved to Portland, Oregon, some 14 years ago, along with my brother Michael, and we started Portland Playhouse. And Portland Playhouse is a community embedded theater company. We're in a neighborhood. We're in a former church building, the former Mount Sinai Baptist Church in the King neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, and we put on plays. We do educational programming, and we're all about the business of transformation, using theater and storytelling to engage with and build the kind of world that we want for the future.
Beautiful. I mean, we're really setting the stage here for the conversation, the deeper conversations we're going to have about how these worlds have collided. And I got a little inkling. I got to be a little part of the work that you two have brought forth, which has now closed. But now we could really dig in and talk about how is this going to transform our community, and how can people lean in to this kind of transformative way of expression. So excited. It is time for our first break already. You're listening to Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa, and we have Brian Weaver here from Portland Playhouse, and Tina Packer from the director of Shakespeare and Company. And we're discussing Healing Out Loud, theater for healing and social change. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on Love and Light, living every day in peace. My guest, Brian Weaver, the artistic director at Portland Playhouse, and Tina Packer, founding artistic director of Shakespeare and Company. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact you. Brian and Tina, could you please give us your contact information, or how people could follow you on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook?
Yes, you can reach me at Brian, which is BRIAN, at portlandplayhouse.org. That's my email, brian@portlandplayhouse.org.
And me, I'm Tina R. Packer. So it's TINARPACKER @gmail.com. You can do Tina at Shakespeare.org if you like, but my Gmail seems to work better than the company Gmail. And
Awesome.
I have all those things that you talked about, Lisa, but I don't do them. They go. I'm hopeless at all that stuff. So the theatre company actually does them for me. So I don't know how that all works.
But people could probably reach you there too. And as well as Brian, yeah. I know you have an Instagram because I follow you. I follow Portland Playhouse on Instagram. So you may not work it, but I know it's there. Awesome. So I was recently involved in the Healing Talk Back after the BIPOC night for Titus with Keela Johnson and Charles Grant at the Portland Playhouse. I found your play fascinating. My mind was just running over and over again about the mirroring of what we experience in society. First of all, for our listeners, could you give a synopsis of the play? And then, I know that's quite a synopsis. That's why I said, can you give a synopsis of the play? And then talk about, I heard you talk a little bit about your vision and breaking these gender and racial paradigms, but how this play opens the door for healing and transformation in so many ways. I know that I'm just throwing a lot out there. I know the conversation will illuminate and become what it's going to be, but I just, talking to both of you, hearing both of you talk about the play, and then seeing the play myself, I watched it 3 times. So many parallels to our world that we live in, and people feel really lost and afraid and scared, untethered. And here is a play. Before I saw it, I remember when we first started talking about it and all of the violence in the play, and I thought, oh my God, like, oh, I just had to hold on to my chair for a minute, like, what is this play gonna bring us? But once I saw and heard your vision, it helped me to see that it's another cycle of healing for our community, and to be able to call out or call in some of the practices that we live in every day. So I'm going to be quiet with that. And
who's going, Brian?
Oh, I'll always defer to you, Tina. But if you want me to do it, you let me know. You want me to do the synopsis, or do you want to?
I'll do the synopsis. Uh, Titus Andronicus has been at war for decades, leading the Roman armies and being very successful, and 21 of his sons have been killed. I might say we never mention who their mothers are. And he's finally coming back to Rome, and they've just lost the emperor, and the Senate says they're going to elect him emperor. But in fact, two factions are fighting, two brothers are fighting to become emperor. And of course, in our production, we got different sides of the audience to cheer and jeer for each one of those people. What happens then is a series of events which all have to do with both what do I want to say, redemption almost, or forgiveness, or are we going to go the way of violence? And and the first thing, once Titus has said, I don't want to be emperor, and he's elected the eldest son. So he's a man of honor. You know, I'm going to do the correct thing. He selected the eldest son to be emperor. And the eldest son says, I'll take your daughter as my wife. Yes, that's fantastic. And then immediately the younger son says, no, you can't. She's betrothed to me and we're in love. And the brothers support their brother in this. And Titus kills one of his sons who tries to prevent him from going after them. So the first thing we see about Titus is that he's willing to kill his own son, which is just horrible, you know. But you also start realizing he's somebody who's suffering terrible from post-traumatic stress, and the fact that he goes so fast to killing his son. From there on, we get plunged into this story. You know, his daughter absolutely adores him, but she's done something that she shouldn't have done, which is, you know, got engaged to somebody without his permission, but he seems to get over that. But it goes on into a struggle for power, and we're not quite sure exactly what the struggle is. I don't know if you want to articulate the struggle, Brian, but for me, this is when it starts getting into so why are we struggling for power when in fact we said Saturninus is going to be emperor? Why are we, what is it? And for me, it seems as if it's the thing of revenge, or it's going to be justice and forgiveness. Tamara, Queen of Goths, who is the prisoner, a prisoner, asked for her eldest son not to be killed in sacrifice to all the children of Titus's who've been killed. And Titus says, no, I can't do that. Their souls will wander in the river Styx forever. I'm sorry, your son, it's my duty to kill your son. So it's done in duty, it's done in honor, and indeed the eldest son gets killed. Tamara then is absolutely vengeful, except she covers it up completely, and she manages to get herself betrothed to the new emperor, and so becomes the Empress of Rome. In the meantime, the only really deep relationship that she has is a loving relationship with Aaron the Moor. And Aaron becomes a kind of dumping ground for everybody's anger and prejudice. And it's all his fault. And so the struggle that ensues then is between Tamara and Aaron on one side and almost everybody else on the other side. Brian, where does it go then?
It it devolves into it follows the revenge cycle with death after death, murder after murder, until everybody, almost everybody, has been killed, including Titus killing his daughter because she has been dishonored, and then him killing, and then Saturninus kills Titus, and Lucius kills Saturninus at a big banquet. They also, well, just to say, Titus does bake Tamara's two sons into a pie and feeds the pie to everybody. So, um, so there's a moment in the play when Marcus gives a speech near the very, very end, but it's a speech that sort of points toward reconciliation. He says, "Oh, teach us how to knit these broken sheaths back together again." And actually, Shakespeare wrote this play when he was young. He was 21. It was his first play. He was just out of, he was an adolescent, just out of school. He wrote this play, and in a lot of his later plays, in the romances, in Cymbeline and King Lear, a lot of his later plays, in The Tempest, he learned how to sort of take the violent world and suggest a possible path toward reconciliation. And Tina's book, Women of Will, really details how Shakespeare's study of the feminine leads toward the possibility of redemption for humanity. In this early play, he has this one speech where the character of Marcus suggests possibly redemption, but then right away it shifts back to power, and Marcus makes the political decision to crown Lucius, Titus's son, and Lucius steps forward and he sheds a couple tears over his father, and then he says, "What shall we do?" And they take Tamara, and he says, "Tamara, we will leave her to rot on the streets and let the birds pick at her. She will be unburied." So we know from Roman culture, so much has been made in the play over the importance of burial with honor.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last moment of the play, they choose to leave her unburied, and then Aaron the Moor, the African immigrant, the sort of the in the play, the villain, but also as Shakespeare has written him, one of the smartest, also the character with the only true love story, the only character who really defends and with his life really defends his son. This much loved character, Lucius in the last moment says, "Take him, bury him up to his chest, and let him die of starvation in the public square." So he has heaped the blame of all of society's ills onto Aaron and onto Tamara, onto blackness and onto femininity, and then taken power and held power. So for me, I think we want there to be another outcome, but the outcome of the play is this sort of assertion of power in the face of abject racism and sexism.
Absolutely. Which mirrors, right, what we are experiencing today.
Yes.
More than ever. And so it's time for a break. So when we come back, we're going to unpack this. Hang with us. When we come back, we're going to unpack this even more to help you understand and to talk about the healing aspects. So time for a break. You're listening to Dr. Lisa, Love and Light, Living Every Day in Peace. We'll be back with Brian Weaver and Tina Packard. Stay tuned. We're back on Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa. I have Brian Weaver and Tina Packard here, and we were talking about the last production of Titus here at the Portland Playhouse. And we were talking about the cycles, a very, very violent play. And I had the benefit of being able to help lead talkbacks with Keela Johnson afterwards on the BIPOC nights. And there's so much parallel to what we're experiencing in our life. What are some of the healing aspects? Now, I have my own ideas. I wrote notes throughout all of the performances, but we were just talking about, Tina, you were just gonna say something before the break. And
well, I was talking about how Titus himself learns to love because of his relationship with his daughter. And it's a complex relationship because he's white and she's Black. So clearly her mother was a person of color, which is unusual in Titus Andronicus, because they're making this other Black man the villain all the time.
Right.
Do you understand me? So now, and it kept on coming up for us. Charles, who's playing Bassianus, was lying dead on the floor for a long time, and it was an absolute mirror of George Floyd. And so we thought, how are we not going to exploit this, but how are we going to be able to point at it? And so what we decided to do was actually break the fourth wall and say we are all actors playing this. And another actor came on stage and woke up, if you would like, this image of a Black man lying dead on the floor, and he actually woke him up and lifted him up. They walked off arm in arm. So there was, and that's not in the play, except it's in the spirit of the play. And so we were finding ways to actually say we're actors playing this, and so the idea of Titus having a Black daughter, might be shocking to traditionalists, but it's perfectly possible. They were ranging all over Europe and North Africa, so it's perfectly possible that could have happened. But through his love for her, he comes out of the awful trauma of decades of fighting and war and living within an honor system, which actually, as Brian said earlier, is not redemptive, or at least the kind of honor system they were living in. It actually keeps the cycle in place. And but love actually was the transforming thing. So both in the thing of another actor going to pick up the actor lying on the floor was an act of love. That Titus's love for his daughter is the thing that allows him to, inside himself, be somewhat redeemed by the end of the play. Doesn't stop him from killing a whole load of people, but it makes him human, and we actually can be there with him instead of just hating him for everything he stands for. So the audience's relationship comes into this. Lisa, I don't know if you can, I'm explaining it very well, but it means that the audience can bear to be with Titus because he's actually showing love in one facet of his life.
Absolutely. I think what you mentioned about, Charles laying there, and it was really one of the most touching moments of the play to see another Black man come and call Charles by name. And it almost kind of like made you like wake up for a second and see that Charles was okay. And it is traumatizing to see as many Black bodies have been killed, and as many women who are killed and harmed through the Indigenous women who are missing, to women in general. But to see that care really made it palatable to be able to say, he is okay, because there is a trauma response that does occur. Also, the part about the gods, for me, as I'm seeing like, well, I have to sacrifice you because of my duty. And that goes into some of the oppressive structures that we're living in today. It is my duty to police you, to manage you. And I thought, wow. And I love the scene where I think Aaron says, go ahead and pray to your God. I know that you pray to that God that you care about. And, I know that you'll do what I ask. And this kind of almost like taunting of religion, like taunting of this thing that's moving you to harm other people and to create these cycles of violence that we talk about that you can't break free from. And it was so moving. Like, I feel like there could be like many talkbacks in our community about how we're breaking free from those cycles. Brian, I know that you haven't weighed in here.
This, all of this reminds me, Tina, of what you said in your intro, which is the role of theater is to speak the unspeakable. And that's what Aaron does so many times. He speaks the unspeakable. He speaks of the horrific violence that he has participated in, but that also that has been heaped on him. So it's like he's acknowledging this horrible cycle of violence that we are all in together. But he names it just, with excruciating and beautiful, poetic, powerful language, the naming of it. It's almost, I think at the end of that speech, Lucius says, stop his mouth. I can't bear it anymore. I can't bear it. And so what does it mean to speak truth to power? Is there the intrinsic power of naming all of the atrocities? And the thing that comes up for me, this play is, it's almost unbearably violent. The content is unbearably violent. And when we went into, preparing to do it, we said, we have to find the love just for ourselves. We don't know what that is, whether there are some love relationships in the play, that's important. But even maybe it's just ourselves as humans telling the story. How are we going to find joy in the process? How are we going to find love in the process of making it? Because it also struck me, Lisa, the intro to this show where it's, and as you're acknowledging this play, the world we live in is a violent world. And I spend a lot of my time trying to not let that in, trying to ignore that, trying to yes, live in peace, live in tranquility, but to try to not let into my consciousness the horrible truth of violence. And in a sense, this play was the opposite of that. It was, how can we go into and explore and understand how the truly horrific violence of the world we live in. And I'm curious for you, Lisa, if we as artists were trying to find the joy and the love of ourselves in the interior process, for you as an audience member, were you finding that? And was that a lifeline? I guess, why would you subject yourself to watching 2 hours of the story of horrible violence in the world?
That's a really good question, Brian. I was asking myself that before I saw it the first time. But after I watched it, I could see almost like a reflection of the world I live in, right? It was a reflection of, oh my goodness, what parts of the world do I see or reflecting back to me that I'm in this cycle of revenge? Or I see these cycles and don't call them out. I'm not Aaron. I'm not calling them out or calling them in, as people say nowadays. That it made me really see how much these cycles of violence are in the water I'm swimming in, and how I want to interrupt that. And so, and then when the love did come, when that wall was broken, and I saw these dark bodies and being picked up on the floor from the floor, and then I just gave me like that, there's hope. There is hope for us. We're not lost. And then at the end, when the queen was like banished and Aaron was banished, I said, oh no, we're back in again.
Right.
We're back in. And it made me really reflective. I took tons of notes. I'm really reflective on what we do every day and how do we use something like this to heal. I wonder, like, we had that talk back afterwards, but I just wonder, like, I don't know, I would almost say, let's have a talk back about it, period, for people to come. And what did you take away? What is our call to action for the good in our world? If it did nothing else, it illuminated how we are Titus, in my mind.
And I think when you think about it, it was written 400 years ago, the play, and it was about events 2,000 years ago. And then you start seeing how strongly this cycle of revenge has us in our grip. You know, it absolutely, we've been living through this for 2,000 years now. And in some ways, you could say it goes from the vengeance of the Old Testament, you know, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And what Christ's message is trying to do is to say, no, love your enemies, which is, you know, Titus manages to love his daughter, but he doesn't manage to love his enemies. He only kills them.
Right, absolutely.
But that shift for, I don't know whether it's fair to call it from the Old Testament to the New Testament, but I know at the time Shakespeare, I know at the time that Shakespeare was writing, they were all talking about the Bible all the time because it had just been translated into the English language instead of it being in a foreign language all the time. And that was true all over Europe. So the Reformation, if you will, was beginning to happen. And the opposing of those ideas were right up there. And Shakespeare, he repeats it again and again in all his plays. And it's particularly true of the late plays where, in fact, forgiveness happens. It's not semi-forgiveness like
I can't
Titus
wait to talk about that. So it's time for a break. We'll be right back with Brian Weaver and Tina Packard talking about healing in theater spaces. We're back on Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa. I have Brian Weaver, artistic director at Portland Playhouse, Tina Packard, founding artistic director of Shakespeare and Company, discussing Healing Out Loud, Theater for Healing and Social Change. So if you can tell our listeners one more time how they can find you, what social media handle you have, if they're looking for you, what do they need to look up?
Well, if they go to Shakespeare.org, which is very simple, you'll find the whole website for Shakespeare and Company there, including my my contact info. So and anything that you send to Shakespeare.org gets to me.
Awesome.
And I'm at Brian at portlandplayhouse.org. Our Portland Playhouse in Portland, Oregon. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, and we're in. After closing the brutal, violent Titus Andronicus, in a couple of weeks, we opened Bella, an American Tall Tale, which is just a fabulous, joy-filled musical story of a full-figured Black woman adventurer go west story. So you should definitely check that out at Portland. That's the best way to engage with Portland Playhouse, is just come check that out.
All right, now a palate cleanser, so to speak. So in this last little bit, we've talked about so many, I mean, we could talk about this for so long, and I do think we should have a talk back about Titus as a community. So if people are listening to this, how can they contribute to the healing out loud part, the social change part? And there's so many things that you did as directors. And I think, Tina, one of the things that really caught me is I heard you say, gender norms are going to be broken, racial, identities are going to be different. I mean, there's so much that we're going to just break those paradigms. And you made this statement like at the right before the opening that said, and get used to it because this is the way the world is, you know? And I was like, I like her. Like, so.
Well, Dr. Lisa, if I could just finish that little thought I was having before the break, which is that trauma is held in the body. You know, we can go into therapy and it's very useful, but if it's just intellectual, you can't be released from it. But trauma itself is held in the body. And if you can release the body, you can start releasing the trauma. And one of the things that acting does is you hold it in, you do it through the body as well as the voice. And so those actors, in a way, were releasing their own trauma. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, absolutely.
And so we all need a hell of a lot of therapy. I mean, those poor people in the Ukraine, but even, you know, the Russian soldiers who are doing it, they're all gonna, they're wrecks. And it, so somehow we have to get this message out that you can, that it is possible to get out of this cycle, but it needs to be in the body as well as in the voice, as well as letting go of old ideas that you didn't even realize you had because they're 2,000 years old and you think it's reality. And I think theater does all that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't, you know, it's a small thing in comparison to television and film, but it actually, in my book, is the most truthful of all the three art forms, and we have to keep on doing it.
I love that. I love that. And one of the things that I talk about a lot in my work is the collective we.
Yes.
That there is and I believe a movement that's coming or that's here is that
Yes.
this is our work and
Yes.
the collective we
Yes.
is, and forgiveness. You were talking about forgiveness too.
Yes.
Like that forgiveness for myself, for those who harm me, for my ancestors, like that energy moving forward. I see light coming for all of us. And this work you're doing is part of it, no doubt. Like I recognize it right away. I knew what it was. And so Brian, you haven't said anything, but I want to make sure you can jump in here.
No, I'm right there with both of you. I think it's in relationship. I mean, in a sense, our collective of actors, designers, directors that were working together to tell this story, we had to, while doing that work, also process both individually and collectively the story and the content of the story we're telling. So we had to talk about racism. We had to talk about sexual violence. We had to talk about violence against trans people. We had to, because you can't just move forward and not address it. And in a sense, it was imperative to the work we were doing as artists, but that is also the work that we're all doing in community, in relationship. With it is to confront these things and talk and with courageous conversations, with sitting in the discomfort and but doing it and going through the discomfort into deeper and deeper relationship and understanding.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I want to ask you, so as Aaron the Moore was kind of like the person who's dumped on, who's saying the things that no one wants to hear, how is that parallel in our community? How is that reconciled in you preparing with these Black men in your space?
Yeah, it's a reflection of how anti-Blackness is still is a dominant force in the world we live in. It's, you know, we talk a lot about at Portland Playhouse about our anti-racist work and how are we bringing anti-racism, and part of that is look, we're all racists. We are, and I don't mean that to say as a name calling thing. I don't mean to say like I'm calling you a racist, and I mean, we have racist ideas. We're part of racist policies. We're advocating for so all of this. It's it is what we have inherited, and the only way to get out of that is to identify it and to say, look, let's say I said this thing. I said this thing. Let's separate that from me and look at that. What do we think about that thing? It's not. I don't have to feel personally attacked or like I'm a bad person because I said this thing. I need to identify it and change it, and all of that has to be in relationship, and we have to have trust with one another. We have to be vulnerable and willing to take a chance, and also willing to fail, to say the wrong thing. And there were many instances in the processes where people were like, Brian, you said this thing, I challenged that, that's a problem. And me saying, I am so sorry, I did, but not backing away, not like, not quitting and going home, but going back in and saying, you're right, I need to spend some more time listening. For a little bit, I'm just going to listen. I'm going to listen and learn, and then I'm going to jump back in.
Wow. I got to tell you, I have so enjoyed, our time is up, believe it or not, but I have so enjoyed this conversation, and I can have this conversation over and over again. It has bring so much healing and awareness of people who are doing something for our collective well-being that is sometimes uncomfortable, right? And so I so appreciate being able to walk this journey with you. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Tina, for being here, for being able to lean into this conversation. And I hope like maybe we're going to be doing this again, because I'm not done yet. Thank you all who are listening. If you'd like to contact me, you can go to my website. You can follow me on Twitter, Ed through Engage, Instagram, Lisa C Healing. I want to just tell you, be your own best friend, and you can join us here next time. I'm so appreciative of my guest today, and and if you could do anything, think about the healing that you can do in your neighborhood, in your community, where you can bring it. All right, thanks. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Love and Light with me, Dr. Lisa, Everyday Living in Peace. You spent the last hour engaging in challenging and transformational conversations, all for the purpose of living a peaceful, joy-filled existence. Join me next time to continue growing in love and light through healing practices and acts of love. To learn more or work with me, Dr. Lisa, visit educationthroughengagement.com. That's educationthroughengagement.com. Remember, the world changes when we change by coming home to love. Tune in every second and fourth Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, here on transformationtalkradio.com.